Hello, hello. I see Dan and Tom and Varun. Hello, everybody. How we doing? Can you guys hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. All right, right on. All right. You guys, thank you for being with us today on the first of many Dolf to Roos training sessions. I am Casey Green. You know me from here at the Kris Krohn Company. I'm the Director of Product Development. With us today is our esteemed guest, Dolf DeRue, and we also have Kris Krohn who's joining us online. Kris, if you can see us, say hello. Let's see if I can see you, Kris. There we go. Kris is in the house. You guys obviously know Kris and Dolf. So we are super excited today to learn from Dolf more about commercial real estate, some brief mindset training, and really just learn more and dive into the basics of commercial real estate, where we can go and how we can make what we hope is a grip load of cash. Is that fair to say, Dolf?
Yes, that's being modest, but yeah, let's make it a big, big load of cash.
A big grip, a Kris Krohn grip size load of cash. So we're super excited to hear from Dolf today. These sessions are being recorded. We will make sure that they end up in the Facebook group with links there, so you have access to those and you can go back and watch all these nuggets that Dolf and Kris are going to drop on us today. Kris, how would you like to go ahead and cue up the amazing things that Dolf has prepared for us today? What are you looking forward to? What are you excited about, Kris? Oh, can I hear me, Kris? Hang on, let's see. Now can you unmute? Kris, can't hear me?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you for taking my training wheels off and unmuting me. I appreciate that, Casey.
I'm gonna make you a co-host, Kris.
No, that's wonderful. Yes, so listen, first of all, I just got to say I'm really excited about every one of you that is actually joining here today. Because you guys are all my business partners and commercial really is the next horizon. I'll tell you what I love about commercial. Dolf is currently reviewing deals with me that any one of them would just be, if the numbers really turn out in the balance sheet is what we hope it'll be, any one of these deals would just be like a grand slam for any one of you here in this group. And that's what I think I really love about commercial is that at some point you want to possess the knowledge and the ability to take down a single deal that can be truly a massive game changer for you. And the only thing keeping you from smaller deals to medium and large and extra large is just personal confidence and experience. And Dolf is here to give that to you. Now, I want to remind everyone that as much as I'm excited to be a part of this group, this is really, I think Dolf is going to be really leading the charge here, truly as the expert on the commercial space. You probably can't shut me up, though. I'm going to have lots to say and comment on. I'm just really thrilled personally to be a part of this because right now, Dolf and I are reviewing several deals, and I'm just excited to do several more commercial deals with him. And for any of you that are in a financial position, there's certainly room for you guys to jump in and participate on any of these. But most importantly is possessing the knowledge and information so that you can do these deals yourself. So with that, Dolf, I'm so honored to have my original mentor here. Every one of you got a chance to meet Dolf personally at the event that we had. And Dolf was so generous with his time to really share so much of who he is with us and his mindset that just really has helped create such magnificent results. And that's what really is going to happen here. You've got proximity to the man, the myth, the legend, Dolf DeRue.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words and your great introduction, Kris. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here with all of you. It truly is. I love this game. So any opportunity to share it, discuss it, brainstorm with you people, it will not be a one-way flow of information. As much as you think you're going to be learning from me, I'm going to be learning from all of you. And Kris, I haven't asked permission for this, but if I may use you as an example, I admire you. I take my hat off to you. What you have achieved is extraordinary. And it took you to remind me that a couple of decades ago, you were kind of the student. I had courses out there with a company called Nightingale Gonant. You were on a sales floor, you were selling them, and you are living proof, Kris, that if you take information and apply it diligently, and you don't look on the short-term results, like you don't say within a week, is it working, but you're willing to take the year-long view and the decade view, that you can create extraordinary things. And that's why I find it such a pleasure working with you in particular, Kris, because we've got this thing going back a couple of decades where if you do apply this knowledge, you can go to the next level. So I'm so excited for all of you being here because it's what Kris said a moment ago. The difference between doing a small 100,000 residential deal and a big $100 million commercial deal is just a few zeros, and it's an attitude. In fact, you could almost say that the effort required to do your due diligence, and if you don't know what due diligence is, you're going to find out today, to do your due diligence to find out if this is a deal worthy of further time, the effort's about the same. Now, it's a bit trickier. And one of the things Kris asked me just before we went on this call is, hey, could you share some of the deals you're looking at? And I would love to, and I will share some of them verbally and maybe even a couple of photos. But one of the subtle differences between doing a small hundreds of thousands of dollar residential deal and several millions of dollars commercial deal is that often you need to have NDAs or non-disclosure agreements and non-circumvention agreements, because the commissions for the agents involved are so big that on most of these deals, I've had to sign strict NDAs that I can't reveal the information to third parties. So I would be in breach of that very confidentiality agreement if I went out into a public forum, which one could argue this is, and share the information. But I think for our next call, I'm going to have that canned by getting permission from these people to say, I want to share it with my potential partners. It's in a public forum. That way everyone's covered. But I am going to share you the sorts of deals we're looking at, because it's the nature of these deals that gets me out of bed in the morning and say, wow, I wonder if we can take one of these down today, because they truly are exciting. And I still get excited by even a relatively modest house. If there's a house on the market and I can see an angle, either the cash flow is really good, or I know that it's only a 2-bedroom house and they sell in the market in this particular area for $260,000. But by building a 3rd bedroom, which is only going to cost me $35,000, so I'll be in it for $295,000. The value of that house in that market is $410,000. I see $100,000 profit, and I'm not averse to pursuing that, even if it's a relatively small deal. But by the same token, when it comes to these larger commercial deals, guys, there are fewer people pursuing them. There's more room for creativity. The sorts of things you can do goes way beyond what you can do with a house. I mean, I've named one of the few things you can do to a house. You can add an extra bedroom. There's not much point in adding an extra kitchen. I don't know how many homes you've seen where there's a second kitchen and the value of that second kitchen catapults that home into a different class. No, you don't generally get the value of the cost of building that second kitchen out of the sale price. What else can you do? Put another roof on it? No. Put a cell phone tower on a house? They'd never allow it. You're very limited with what you can do. But as you'll see, and you've probably got a notion already, which is why you're here, what you can do to a commercial building is often limited only by your imagination. And then you'll have it where you feel as though you've got spectacles, like rose-colored glasses or whatever. I feel as though I've got spectacles on, where when you put them on, you look around, you see what this commercial building could be. And suddenly you ask yourself, why is no one else doing this? So that's what really gets me excited. We're going to explore all of that. But I want to remind you that if this were just a one-way flow of communication, if this were Dolf sharing things that I've built up in my brain and getting it to your brain, we could effect that. We could transfer that information very effectively through books or seminars or events or videos or audios. So the fact that it's a Zoom meeting, our platform happens to be Zoom, it could be GoToMeeting or Skype video or whatever, but the fact that it's a two-way interactive session means this is your opportunity, not just to hear what I think you'd like to hear, but for you to tell me what it is that you truly want to hear. So I want you to interrupt and interject and heckle and say, hey, what about this or what about that? Or to kick it off by saying, well, the real reason I'm here is I'm looking at it, whatever kind of commercial property, and that's what I want to pursue. And can you talk about that? Because that's where there'll really be a very efficient transfer of information. Any thoughts on that? Any questions that come up when I mention that?
Yeah, so this is Casey. Guys, go ahead and light up the chat with questions or put your digital hand up when you have something to get to Dolf. And I'll make sure that I call you up and we can make sure you get unmuted, okay? So just make sure, blow up the chat with questions you have, raise your hand, and we'll make sure we get you hooked up with Dolf.
And real quick, Casey, just while everyone's kind of thinking, wow, do I have any questions? Do I have anything I want to bring up? I would love for everyone just at the start here to actually declare your intention. For some of you, it's, hey, I want to spend a year learning and growing. And some of you are thinking, I want to get into a deal as soon as possible. Some of you are like, well, I want to start looking at deals. I would just love for everyone to share, and at least just in the chat for Casey so he can see it. Go ahead and just type, what is your specific intention for being a part of this group? Because I know that Dolf, wants to know as well as I do, how we can make this the most rewarding
Well, I love
experience
that
for
idea,
you.
but Kris, how about we ask everyone to vocalize it? They just share and we get to know each other a little bit. We've got a manageably small group today, which is really cool. I love it. If we'd hit 300 here, it would be almost impossible to do that. So we can start with volunteers. And I have this really great way where if there's no volunteer coming forward, I can create volunteers, if you know what I mean.
So I've actually got Varun. Varun, we're going to go ahead and get you unmuted here. So go ahead, Varun, and fire a question to Dolf and Kris.
Hey, Dolf and Kris, and hi, everyone. So good to see you all. Definitely, knowledge is definitely I'm interested in Dolf, but I think first thing is I think starting with the commercial deal. So I think what is your vision with the program? So initially when we met in the program, we just signed a document, and it's all that okay, something is coming up. So I'm not sure if you can share like what are we going to do, how this next whatever the sessions are going to be, or what you have envisioned that these are the steps we are going to take in future, in say next 1 month, next 2 months. Yes, I'm interested in commercial deal, and I'm definitely interested in learning more, and then having that confidence that okay, you know what, I can execute it, or oh, I saw a few deals, I can share it with you. Now brainstorming also that how we can turn around these commercial properties which are available in my backyard.
Right.
But right now don't have confidence because I've never done that. That's
right. Well, if it's all right, I'm going to address these issues as they come up, these questions, so that every time someone speaks, we can give a response to that. So firstly, it is a philosophy of life for me that if you have too much in life planned, if you have too many to-do lists and you just go around ticking off your to-do list, you'll never come across the spectacular deals that will make a massive difference in your life. And there's an author whose books I really like. I've got one of his books here. It's not the book I refer to, Fooled by Randomness, and it's by Nassim Taleb. And he's a Lebanese author, but he wrote a book called The Black Swan. And the black swan, I may have mentioned this before, it refers to the fact that for all of history, humans knew that all swans were white. You ever see a swan, it's white. That was just a given, and we didn't know why, but biologically, all swans were white. And then in the 1830s, I think it was, these explorers were crisscrossing Australia. So they were in the outback of Australia, going by camel, by the way. And they came across these swans that were not white, but they were black. And suddenly they were confronted with the reality that the species that we knew always were white, that black ones did exist. So Taleb uses this as an analogy. He says a black swan is an event that you don't expect to happen, and then it happens anyway. Or conversely, it could be an event that you expect to happen, and then unexpectedly it doesn't happen. And his whole point is that we shouldn't try to avoid black swans like cyclones or tornadoes, tsunamis, crashes in the market. Rather, we should depend on them, we should expect them, and we should rely on them because your life can go better. So one of the things I want to do philosophically is to train you to embrace the unexpected, because it's from the unexpected that you'll make big leaps and bounds in your success. Number two, I want to give you a sense that there is so much creativity with commercial real estate. I want to expand your mind so that when you go for a drive, whether it's to pick your kids up from school or go to the supermarkets, you've got a new zest for living because you're looking at a commercial building and how you might be able to transform it into something else. Number three, I want to go over some of the fundamentals so that you understand exactly why commercial real estate is so much better than any other form. Right? You've probably heard me say it, you've heard Kris talk about it, that the value of a home is based on the value of a similar 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, same age, same condition, same number of bedrooms, same number of floors, whether it's got a swimming pool or not. That defines the value of that home. And if there's one on the street that's selling at $463,000, the one across the road that's similar age, similar condition, similar size is probably going to sell for around the same price. Whereas that rule does not hold true at all for commercial real estate. And you may have heard this, but we're going to go over it again. Then number four, I want to show you some of the deals that I'm working on so that you get a sense of, wow, who would have thought that you could make money out of such an operation? And then number five, the ultimate, Varun, the one that I really want you to get to the point of not just doing, but embracing and feeling comfortable in that space. is I want you all to be out there looking at deals and bringing them to this table, this platform on a future Zoom call. I want you to say, Dolf, can I share? I found one and I want to know if it's good. And you might have figured out things about that property that we haven't even thought of. Or conversely, it could be Kris or myself or someone else on this group who says, have you thought of doing this with it? Or have you thought of turning it into a that? And suddenly by being in this group, you can take a commercial property, which is not performing very well for the current owner. And if you bought it as is and operated it as is, it probably wouldn't perform very well for you. But with the collective brain power of this group, you can turn it into something where the results are so astounding. Your neighbors are going to say, how on earth did you find that? And the answer is, you just thought of it. You thought of it. And the reason why people today do things that their parents didn't think of doing is simply their parents didn't think of doing them. And this is really a platform where you can change the way you think to see opportunities that were always there, but you never noticed because you were just not in that mode.
So are we going to share the deals in this Zoom, or is it going to be on the Facebook? How would it, or are we going to take an example that, okay, if I share one property, oh, this is the property which is empty right now, can we do anything? I'm just for brainstorming or just taking as an example?
No, it's a great question. And again, there's no rule for this. So there's no rule that says you can only share them on a live Zoom call, or you're not allowed to share them here. You have to share them on the, whatever you want. If you come across a deal and it's still 2 weeks or 3 weeks away from our next call, and you want to share it on the Facebook group, that's fine, assuming you're allowed to share it. And then with the calls coming up, you can brainstorm with us here and say, hey, I have here the photos. We'll let you share the screen, show us aerial views, some of the numbers involved, and we can help you brainstorm. This is all about changing the way we think. Because for most people, when they first come across a commercial property, they look at it somewhat dumbfounded and say, well, I see it's got a roof. It probably needs a roof so that when it rains, it doesn't get wet inside. But I don't know what else to look for. I don't know what constitutes a good commercial property. And then as time goes on, and depending on the kind of commercial, we'll learn that there are all these ratios, like you need a certain number of car parks per square footage of office space for it to be a properly lettable commercial office building. But when it comes to retail, it's not the number of parks that matters so much as the street frontage. And when it comes to storage, it's not street frontage. It doesn't matter if it's on a back street that's hard to get to, because once you know how to get there, you only go there once a month or once every 6 months. That doesn't matter. It says there are a turning bay for trucks and all these subtle little things that, unless you're dealing with that specific class of property, you don't really need to know about. So part of it, Varun, and you're touching on it, is not to have too many rules about, can I share this property on Facebook or on Zoom? It doesn't matter. It's your forum. This is your commercial real estate family where you can, without being laughed at, share ideas and ask questions and get answers.
Awesome, Varun. Thank you.
Let's
Okay,
move on. Can we get to the next one?
yes. Tom, I saw you there. Tom, will you share with us your intention? I see you put it in the chat, but go ahead and share with us your intention and reason for being here with Dolf. I should probably unmute you, Tom, if I call on you. Let's see here. There we go. Tom.
There we go. All right.
Thank you.
Hey Dolf, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate your time. My intention, I guess I'm looking to do that triple digit ROI, right? I think Kris has done a great job educating us all on single family. And I feel like I'm confident in that area, but you know, your talk at the partner event and what I'm hearing from you is got me really excited about commercial. So I'm just, you know, I'm new at this. I want to learn what it takes to potentially get into these deals. And, you know, I'm already thinking kind of creatively. I saw a building on the way over to, you know, Keene, New Hampshire. And I was like, oh, that used to be this or that. And now it's for sale. I wonder what that could be. So, you know, I guess just being here, I feel like I'm already starting to think, which I, you know, didn't even expect. But yeah, so my intention is to just get into commercial and see where that takes me.
That is so cool, Tom, and so cool to hear that you're already starting to think that way. And this is how it works, guys. It's not that there'll be specific sentences that I or Casey or Kris can utter that you're going to implement. That could be part of it, but it's also that you're going to change your thinking. And the sooner and faster you can figure things out for yourself, the better it will be. That's why I always say, I don't really care how much you like me. I don't care whether I have jokes and whether you laugh at them. And it's not about that. It's whether in 6 months' time or 18 months' time, you've transacted a commercial property that you may not have transacted had you not been on these sessions. That's what it really boils down to. And anything else is just a bonus. And by the way, Tom, you might find a building where you're inspired to think of an alternative use for it. But if you can't think of an alternative use, we're going to give you ideas where you can create the use, where you create the business, get it up and running, and then you'll have a double whammy win. You sell the business, and in doing so, you've just created a long-term lease with a tenant for your commercial building. That's sort of a hot double-edged win. I love that. I love when I do that. Anyway, well, thanks for sharing, Tom. That's cool.
So I'd like to, let's do a couple more here before we get going off. I'd like to, Trey Sykes and Kimberly, they both say they want to increase cash flow and do deals with Dolf right away. And they're excited to learn, so that's really good. I'd like to call up Jason. Jason, talk to us a little bit about your purpose for being here. I'm going to unmute you here, Jason, or ask to unmute you. So talk to us a little bit, Jason, about why you want to hang out with Dolf today. Did I miss the button? There we go.
Hi, Dolf. Yeah, good to see you again. Thanks for doing this. I was curious. I want to use our time wisely with you. Do you recommend we read the book and do some research on our off time as well? I want to make sure the time with you is very used smartly and done in the right way. So I'm very new, like everybody else, to commercial, and I think it'd be helpful if I read your book. I have your book, the latest one, the commercial real estate one. Is it good to read that to get a background so we can ask more intelligent questions of you as well?
Absolutely. I think I really subscribe to this theory. You never learn less. So by all means, read my book on commercial real estate, but I'm not saying don't read anyone else's book, just read mine. It's not about that. I don't think there's such a thing as a bad book on real estate. There are good books and better books and not so good books, but you cannot fail to at least get one idea from a book. So I would encourage you, if you've got mine anyway, read it. It's sort of very in tune with my teaching style, but even other books which may not be in tune with that style, read them, because you might just learn one word or one definition or one concept that will really propel you to the next level. So yes, read the books. They don't have to be visual books with pages. They could be audio books. When you have an hour to spare sometime, it might be the middle of the day and you've got a lunch hour and you don't know what to do for that lunch hour, have a quick bite to eat and then go to the local commercial real estate office and just sit down and say, hey, you don't need to tell fibs about how much commercial you've got. You might say, I don't own anything, but I will be owning something. And, it may as well be you, the agent who brings it to me, as anyone else. Can you tell me what is the best deal you've got on your books right now? And when you do reveal that one, tell me why you think it's the best one. Often you learn a lot about the agents that way. Like they might say, well, this is the best deal. And you say, well, why is that one good? And so, well, I don't know, I had to pick one. I mean, he's not going to be your agent at the end of the day. But if he says, well, it's got a similar area and condition to these other properties, and for some reason, the others are fully let and this one is under rented. By the way, on the surface, that sounds bad, but that's great, because generally the price will reflect the fact that it's not fully tenanted and you can buy it. And as long as you can get a tenant for that space, you're going to increase the value, instant equity. I love it. So absolutely read other books, talk with people, listen to things, and then, turn up, as I'm sure you're doing already, with an open mind, because it's people with an open mind who have no preconceived notions. You will come across the black swans, and because you're prepared for them, you'll capitalize on them.
Excellent. So one last one. We're going to go to Dan. Dan had an amazing breakthrough session with us here at our event, Dolf. You'll probably remember Dan as soon as you see him. Dan, talk to us a little bit about your intention for being here with Dolf and being in the program.
Yeah, like most others, we're super excited to jump in with both feet in commercial. Don't have the knowledge ourselves, so that's the main reason why we decided to partner and piggyback on Dolph's experience and learn from him as we go. We need to start building some cash flow and getting other things set up before we'll feel comfortable of leaving our current jobs, and that above anything else is our main goal at this point, is getting out of the daily 9-to-5 grind and being able to start spending a little bit more time with family.
Well, that is so cool to hear. And what I love about this attitude you all have is you're talking about what I need to do to be able to quit my job. We go through, 12 or 14 years of schooling, primary, secondary, tertiary education, to learn how to develop skills to get a job. And my daughter, she just turned 20. She just finished her second year at university. And she's had a lot of pressure put on her by all manner of people saying, you need to get an internship, even if it's unpaid. And she'd say, why do I need an internship? And the answer was, well, so that when you apply for a job, your resume will look as though you were dedicated and willing to put in the effort. There wasn't 1 hour spent in her education, and she didn't go to the worst schools in the country. Arizona ranks pretty poorly, by the way. We're 48th in the rankings of schools. So to get anything slightly above average or even at the average mark in Arizona, you kind of don't go to a public school in Arizona. So she had the benefit of a great education, and not 1 hour was spent on the definition of the term passive income. It just didn't occur to them that people should or could be interested in that. It was all about develop skills to get a job. And it's understandable, because the people teaching these skills are the ones with the jobs. And if they were to encourage people not to have a job, it'd be like admitting at a subconscious level that what you're doing is wrong. And people have the greatest difficulty admitting that. So it becomes a self-fulfilling and perpetual cycle of people with jobs teaching other people how to have jobs. And this notion of passive income goes by the wayside, which is why, Dan, what you just said rings so true to me. And I'm so happy to hear this for you guys, that you're already in the mode of thinking, what can we do to build up the passive income in order to be able to quit the job? And it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, because if you didn't have a job to go to, that I imagine consumes around 40 hours a week, and there 40 of your prime hours, like it's from 9 till 5, right? It's before then what you do from 6 a.m. to 9. You wake up, you shower, you eat breakfast, you clean your teeth, you get dressed, not necessarily in that order. You can't do much in terms of building up your passive income in that time. And similarly, when you finish work at 5, you've got to do the grocery shopping and put your petrol or gas in the car. You've got to pick the kids up from wherever their after school activities are. My point is, there are very few hours left out of the 168 hours we all get every week to develop that extra passive income. And there's the irony. We have to have that job to keep ourselves going until we have enough passive income to be able to afford to give up the job. But you are light years ahead of other people who haven't even thought of this. They come home and figure out what's happening in that soap opera, because, the only quote I can think of, I haven't had TV for decades, is "Who shot JR?" That shows you how long ago it is since I've had TV. And that's why I say, with a bit of humor, if you want to improve your life, take your TV and toss it out the window. If you want to save some money, I'm all for that. Open the window first, but get rid of the TV. Now, full disclosure. Full disclosure, I have a TV, but I use it for watching things that I choose to put on. Like, I don't listen to things or watch things that come out at the time they nominate. So I don't have any subscriptions, no cable, no dish, nothing. I find it's kind of a waste of time. Not completely. There are some things that are really useful, I know that. But in general, I find that most people who have TV and get really good value out of their cable subscription, a year will go by and they've watched hundreds of hours of programs and soaps and dramatic things and Twilight this and RoboCop Robbo, shoot 'em up with a chainsaw that. And it's filled in their time, but they've got nothing to show for it.
And Dolf, Dolf, I just got to say, that's why it's so important. They should get rid of their TVs, but then they should subscribe to really great YouTube channels like Dolf Roos and Kris Krohn. And that's always a great use of time, right, Jason McLeish? Yes, snarky. He'd put a comment in there. He's like, is financial education on YouTube do you have permission for that one?
Yes, absolutely. And I tell you what, just as an aside, but we go on these tangents. So I used to shoot these videos long before YouTube existed. That's how old I am. And it doesn't matter, but they were 18 minutes because that was the sweet spot. And then we realized that people's attention spans weren't that long, and it was 12 minutes. And then we decided to do it in 5 minutes. And then TikTok came out, and I understand they've now extended it to 4 minutes for some people. But for most of us, it was 1 minute. And I thought, how am I ever going to compress what I want to say on a little topic in 1 minute? And I haven't been on TikTok for long. I got there on the encouragement of Kris and his gang at the Kris Krohn enterprise machine of creating things that people want. And so I started doing it. I thought 1 minute would be hard. And then I thought, well, I'm going to challenge myself. So I got it down to 36 seconds. And then you start watching a few TikTok things. And there are some really humorous things. It's kind of fun. It's addictive, right? Like you get that guy saying, it's too late. You should go to bed. And I look at the watch and it's 3 in the morning. I think, yeah, he's probably right. How did he know, you know? But I will say this, you can learn a lot on TikTok. There's a lot of really good information. There's a lot of nonsense too, a lot of things that eye-popping, but you know, you can learn a lot. So I'm not averse to that at all. It doesn't matter where you get the information from. It could be a big, heavy epitome of a textbook that you wade through. At the end of the day, it's like I said before, in 18 months' time, will it have had a massive impact on your life or not? And I think that's the real crucial thing. So yes, fill your mind with the desire to learn, right? And it's curiosity. It's curiosity, and it serves you well. So I know that's sort of all mixed messages, but they are all related. And I hope you get the sense that I'm not reading from a script. And I'll go further than that, guys. In 35 years, it might be longer, I hope not. But anyway, in 35 years of presenting all over the world, I've taught in 27 countries. Not once have I gone up on stage with a piece of paper with cliff notes or my speech written out, because then it wouldn't be genuine. Then I'd be reading something that I'd written ages ago, and I'd be presenting the same thing time and time again. And even though some of the sound bites might be the same, at least you know that every time I'm on stage, it's different. And this Zoom session right now is different from anything I might have done before, because the group's different and it's fresh. Whatever's on my mind is what's going to come out. And that's got to be your attitude when you find commercial real estate, because more so with commercial than residential, if you try and replicate a deal you did last week because it went really well, firstly, you won't find a deal that's the same. Every commercial deal is unique in its own way. And secondly, if you try and replicate what you did before, you're not going to have extraordinary results. The reason why at times I have extraordinary results is because we do things that no one has thought of because they're new. So be willing to be daring and be willing to be wrong. I'm wrong so often. I make so many mistakes. It's not funny, but I love making mistakes. I don't like repeating mistakes. I try not to repeat them. That's a bit silly. But making mistakes is good. In fact, it was Einstein who's credited with saying, if you're not making enough mistakes, you're not trying enough new things. A lot of his theories turned out to be wrong, and he abandoned them when he did the mathematics and realized they weren't getting anywhere. But it's because you're constantly pushing the envelope. What can I do here? What can I do there? We once had an exercise, how many revenue generating things can we put on the roof of a commercial building? And maybe just for fun, we should brainstorm some of them now. I've mentioned one already earlier on the Zoom, which is putting a cell phone tower on the roof of a building. And by the way, you see cell phone towers all over the world. Just to give you a bit of history, back in the 1970s, these guys came up with this idea that they would put 24 satellites into orbit around the Earth in 3 banks of 8. So 8 satellites in a linear plane, another 8 here and another 8 down below, so that wherever you were on the planet, you could see at least 2 or 3 of these satellites, and you could have satellite phone communication. It was called Iridium. It cost at the time a horrendous amount of money. It was $80 billion to launch these satellites and put them up there. And the headquarters was in Tempe, which is where my daughter is at university, ASU. It's about 6 miles down the road from here. So that's where the world headquarters was. And that was going to be a system whereby wherever you were on this planet, you could communicate with anyone else. And then something happened that made that system fall by the wayside. By the way, one of the problems is to be in geostationary orbit, you're at about 36,000 kilometers, which means the path for a round trip signal, I speak through my satellite phone, it goes to a satellite to a ground station. It routes it to a satellite that can reach you wherever you are on the world. It was a quarter of a second, 250 milliseconds, not that dramatically long. But when a voice is delayed by that much, it makes it very difficult to hold a fluid conversation. And in the meantime, between coming up with this idea and their 80 billion and launching all these satellites, they started to put in ground-based cellular systems where you have a cell phone tower that has a reach of maybe 5 miles, sometimes less. And so many people use this that eventually the assets of Iridium was sold for $8 million. And now it's interesting to see that Elon Musk is putting up, is it 2,400 satellites to swathe the earth in internet communications. So this technology keeps on coming up. You know, so we're constantly looking at what's new and what's different. So we've got all these cell phone towers. Do you think that the cell phone companies like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, they just pick a building at random? No, you can create your building to be chosen. And the way you do it is you get on the roof of that building. It's no good if it's in a valley with no view, because if there's no visual view for your eyes, then there's no view for the antennas. So if you've got a building that stands proud, it's on top of a hill if it's a hilly city, or it's a tall building in a flat city, then go up there and not with a cheap throwaway camera, but with a really high quality camera, take photos all the way around and print them on 24 by 36 glossy sheets and send them to all of the cell phone companies and say, this is the view from my newly acquired commercial building. It would make an ideal cell phone tower location. And if you get them to say, yes, we're interested, depending on the population that is based there, you might get 100,000 a year, you might get $500,000 a year. Guess who has to pay for the electricity for this tower? They do. Guess who pays for the insurance? They do. Guess who pays for the maintenance? They do. You have zero outgoing, zero management, and every year, every month, whatever it is, you get a check. So we're talking about the things you can put on the roof of the building. I've already come up with one, a cell phone tower. Who wants to come up with another one? Oh, is it hard for people to unmute themselves, Casey?
No, they should be able to do that now. I just changed that setting.
Okay, cool.
Maybe a billboard?
Say
Some kind of a billboard or some type of
billboard,
advertising?
absolutely. Billboard on top of the building, that's very popular. We had one in Sydney, Australia. Sydney's not the capital, but it's the commercial hub, if you like. It was generating $523,000 a year for a billboard on top of a 14-story building, because it was right by a street called Broadway. There are Broadways all over the world, and there were 40,000 cars going down there every day. And by the way, there was a 2-story building next door, and we were paying $80,000 a year for the air rights to that 2-story building. Think very carefully. Air rights. We had the right to do what we wanted with the air above that building. Why were we willing to pay $80,000 a year for the air rights, which we never used, by the way? Because if we didn't do that, someone else could put a billboard on that building and block the view to our billboard, and then we'd lose $523,000. It was worth $80,000 a year to guarantee the 523. It means we only netted whatever it is, 463 a year, but it was a good trade-off. You can make money from the air rights of a building. It's just fascinating. So yes, billboard, cell phone tower. How about a helipad, right? I've talked about that before. By the way, I am an engineer, and I know that in general, a helipad and a cell phone tower are sort of two incompatible activities. One interferes with the other. But nowadays, a cell phone tower, if it's on a tall building, it doesn't need to be a big, tall antenna. It could be just those 18-inch or 2-foot long antennas that they stick to the side of the building. So you could have those on the side of the building near the top and still have your helipad on the roof. Anyone else? What else can we put on the roof that would generate passive income? Have you ever seen microwave repeater dishes where the telephone companies repeat all their telephone signals? They're sort of 2-3 feet in the air and they have a bit of a cover on them. Well, you've seen them. What about satellite receiver dishes for Bloomberg fields and the like? All right, you're limited only by your imagination. What about a viewing deck? You know, on tall buildings, they have them. The Empire State Building, you name it. These are all things you can put up that can generate revenue for you. So it's just a matter of thinking, dang, what else could we put on this roof? And most of these things I've mentioned, with the exception of the helipad, they're not incompatible with each other. You could have all of them. What about weather stations? What about putting an IP camera, which is an internet camera, right? You're connected to the internet, and you sell the feed to the news networks so that they can see what the traffic's like in that part of town or what the weather's like. You're limited only by your imagination. You might say, well, which news company would buy it? You're in Phoenix. News companies have TV cameras on various buildings. You just need to find one of yours, put the camera there and see if you can sell it. Right, limited by your imagination. So that's the sort of thing that we're looking at, and that's why I love commercial real estate. You cannot begin to do this with residential. With residential, the process is, and there's nothing wrong with it. I started in residential. I'll still look at a house if it's got a good angle to it. But I prefer commercial for reasons I'm happy to explore even today or as these sessions go on. But when you think about it, you buy a house because the location's reasonably good, the condition of the house is adequate, or it's not in a very good condition, but by spending a limited amount of money, maybe 30,000, you can increase the value by 80,000. That's all good stuff. And then when you've done the renovations and painting it and putting it in the flower bed or whatever else you want to do, then you get a tenant and you hope they pay the market rent for it and that they pay on time. And then that's it. You wait for time to do its magic. Over time, the value of the property will go up and the value of rentals will go up, and you crank it. The more of these you own, the better off you are in a certain sense. But that's about the extent of what you can do with a home. And what I love about commercial is, you know, as I keep saying, you're limited only by your imagination. And I let my imagination run rife. I love it. I just love thinking, what else can we do here? What's another angle? And there used to be a time when all over the world, city councils and the authorities, if you had a restaurant, for instance, you couldn't put tables and chairs out on the sidewalk or the footpath. That was council land. How dare you even think that? So everyone was shooed inside. But now they've got a different idea, because the atmosphere you create when you have tables and chairs outside and sun umbrellas and pot plants and you name it, the whole atmosphere changes. So council actually supports it. And there's a whole movement, you know, it was changed a bit through the pandemic, where people went back to the centers of cities they'd been abandoned. Here in Phoenix, for instance, the heart of Phoenix was probably one of the most dangerous parts of Arizona. It was abandoned. It was horrible. There were down and outers there. And in the last decade, it's undergone a revival, a gentrification, some call it, where they've spruced up these beautiful old buildings and turned them into bars and restaurants and wine clubs and you name it. And now there's a hustle and a bustle when you walk downtown that you think, wow, this is really cool. It's very appealing for people to be there. If you can be part of that movement, you know, there are just tremendous opportunities. A lot of people are using containers at the moment, shipping containers. And for most of my life, we thought of shipping containers as being horrible, ugly, rusty hulls of metal boxes made of 1/4-inch steel, which were only useful for shipping goods around the world. And that was about it. And more recently, people have started getting very creative about turning them into homes and turning them into commercial premises. And where I got my biggest education on this is down in New Zealand. I spent most of my time in New Zealand in a beautiful city called Christchurch, one word. And it's known as the city of parks and gardens. 1 acre in 4 is either parks, gardens, or reserves. It was just beautiful. And then almost exactly 10 years ago in February of 2011, it was devastated by a massive earthquake. It was 6.9 on the Richter scale. It was as strong at ground level as the one in Haiti. In Haiti, 200,000 people died. In Christchurch, is a testament to the strong and stringent building code. Only 189 people died, but 1,600 commercial buildings came down and 15,000 homes came down. So it really was devastating for the commercial hub. But what they did is they built a temporary commercial city based out of containers. They just put them, not at random, but they put them in interesting angles with walkways across and plasma cut holes in them. And they put windows in there. They had coffee shops and shoe stores and you name it. And people opened their eyes to the possibilities of what you can create with containers. And partially precipitated by that, but partially it was a movement happening anyway. Even here in Phoenix, where I am, there's an 8-plex apartment complex built entirely out of shipping containers. There's a 5-story apartment building built out of shipping containers. And there are lots of commercial spaces. There's one down on 2nd Street where they have commercial offices on the ground floor with living quarters upstairs. And you've got to admit that the building cost and the structural strength of these is second to none. The building cost is low and the structural strength is high. So again, it's a matter of expanding our thinking to encompass what we didn't think was possible before. And with that, I'm going to throw it open in case some of you have already come to the table, maybe not. And if not, that's okay, but I'm going to encourage you to do so for next time. Do any of you have a property, a commercial property that you're looking at and you perhaps don't know how to evaluate it? You have no idea whether it's good or bad, or you do have an idea, you think it's good and you want some ideas on it. Does anyone have a commercial property already that you want to share?
Dolf, this is Kris. Do you mind if I got to get a curiosity out of my mind. My brother and my brother-in-law, they're, you know, one's an investor, one's in excavation, very, very talented. And it was the funniest thing. They came up to me and they said, "Hey, Kris, in Arizona, we've got a chance to buy this land and we want to put in, a man-made, lake that we can do this water skiing thing on." And I laughed. I'm like, I've heard of this before. and they said, "Well, do you want to go in on it with us?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to go ask Dolf if he would ever be interested in doing a deal again like he had done, because sometimes when a deal's done, you look at it and you say, that ended up being really worthwhile and profitable, or that took too long, or there was some unforeseen challenges. Would you ever do one of those water ski parks again?"
Not in a hurry, unless there were extenuating circumstances. And let me explain why I wouldn't do it again in a hurry. And then let me explain the extenuating circumstances we had, because it's a great lesson on how many commercial deals go down. We talk in general between residential real estate and commercial real estate, but I want to explain another two categories, and that is where you buy something that's already there versus when you develop something. Now, there are many developers who've done extraordinarily well, way better than I'll ever do. They've made billions and billions by developing. But I think there's an inherent risk in developing, and it goes as follows, and you'll see this pattern all over the world. A developer stumbles across an idea to develop homes or commercial or a water ski lake or something, and let's say he does it, it's on time and on budget, and he makes $1 million. And he says to his wife, or she to her husband, "Oh my gosh, we've done so well. Let's do another one. This is so good, honey. This is such good money." So instead of doing another $1 million deal, they get it in their head that they want to do a $10 million deal. So they take a big risk, they borrow everything, and they do it, and it works. And they think that they're invincible now. So they want to do another one. And this time they're going to do a $50 million deal. And again, they borrow everything and put everything they've got into it. And it's not as if something goes horribly wrong, but interest rates are up a bit from what they were before. Demand is down a bit on what they expected. So the pre-sales aren't as good. And then the cost of lumber has gone up beyond what they expected. And everything goes a bit off. And suddenly they're running out of cash. And the bank starts to recall one loan. And when the bank announces that, the other lenders start, and you get the story, it collapses and they go under. And then someone buys that project for 10 million, they might go under as well. It gets sold a third time for 5 million, and those guys sell it for 60 million. They do really well. The pattern, in my humble view, all over the world with developers is they make a lot of money, they make even more money, and then on the third deal, which is going to set them free for 3 generations, they go broke. And the only way to avoid that, and it's a rule that I try to stick to, and every time I deviate from the rule, not every time, but often when I deviate from the rule, I get caught out by my own philosophy of why it doesn't work. It goes wrong. So the challenge with doing a water ski development is that it is a development. And right now the economy looks good, right? Interest rates are low and prices are at record highs. But if all of us on this call were to agree to do a water ski lake development, and I confess I've done one, we might think we can't go wrong. But if it takes 3 years to complete, who knows what's going to happen in those 3 years? What if interest rates go from the current 2.7% is about the lowest you can get for residential to 5%? And suddenly the number of buyers to take these lots on our water ski park has gone down from we'd sell them all within 3 months to after 2 years, we've still got half of them. And what if people...
So Dolf, I first of all, I really appreciate the mindset. I've always, I've observed the exact same pattern in development. And so this is just a learning lesson for me right now, which is development can be commercial, but that's not necessarily the kind of commercial that you're always talking about. For you, there's a difference between, am I developing something or am I taking something existing? And so what I kind of get is that you're not as keen or as in a hurry on developing something because it's a multi-year game and you have to have things timed the right way. And you need certain things to be going in your favor, or else it can be dangerous.
Right. And most developments, almost without exception, Kris, they go over time. You think it's going to be 2 years, it ends up being 3. And they go over budget. You think it's going to be 13 million and it's 17 million. And you might think, well, what's 4 million at that level? It's $4 million. And it can be the difference between a sensationally profitable development and one where you barely pay your bills. That's the risk. Now, are there extenuating circumstances? Yes. How I came across the water ski lake that I did with some partners is there were 15 years prior to us coming on the scene, a group of avid water skiers who got together and they wanted to set up a cooperative, and their idea was to build a water ski park. So they had an operating agreement And in order to encourage them never to have an argument, they wrote in their operating agreement, if ever we have an argument as to how to go forward, we'll sell the project at the original cost price. That might seem like a pretty
Horrible
good disincentive to have an argument, but it was 11 guys over 15 years. Do you think they might have an argument? Well, they sure did. And they invoked their own silly clause, and they sold it at a price that they'd bought it for 15 years prior. And that's when, you know, my partners and I came on the scene and we thought, this sounds too good to be true. And it was a pretty good deal. So we went ahead with it. But I've got to admit that by the time we finished it and by the time we were selling off the last lots, the market had started to turn. It was the GFC, and we got caught a bit by that. So to your point, Kris, when I buy commercial real estate, I like it so that the day I take possession, I've got cash flow coming in, a surplus of rental income over outgoings.
Cool.
And that
Thank
way
you.
it's easy to fund because the bank knows, all right, if we fund this, there's cash flow. They like to hear this debt servicing ratio. All that means is that your rental income surpasses the outgoings by a fixed ratio. Debt servicing ratio of 1.25 or 1.4. Debt servicing ratio of 1.4 means that if you've got $1 million of outgoings of expenses, property tax, insurance, maintenance, you've got 1.4 million of rental income to cover that. In other words, you can have 40, well, it's not quite 40%, but you can have 400,000 of that 1.4 million of rental income go stale, tenants not paying, or they do a runner in the middle of the night, and you've still got enough remaining rental income to pay your monthly debt servicing. And you've got that with something that I just described, where when you buy it from day one, you've got income. If it's a development, there's no debt servicing ratio because there's no income. In fact, you've got outgoings. You've borrowed money to do it, and investors have put money in, and there might be interest on some of that money. You're behind from day one. You don't sleep as well, I don't think. I love it. Every time I acquire a property, my passive income goes up. And theoretically, it's indexed for inflation. And just a subtle reminder, one of the advantages of commercial real estate that I went over is that most commercial lease documents, by mutual agreement between tenants and landlords all over the world, they have a ratchet clause. It's one word, ratchet. It means the rent at worst will stay the same, and at best, from your point of view, it will slowly creep up, but it cannot go down. So if the rent was $14 a foot and there's a rent review at the end of this year, at worst, it'll stay at 14, but it might go up. It will not come down. And on the surface, this may seem unfair to the tenant. How come in a good economy, rents can go up, but in a bad economy, rents can't go down? And the answer is very simple and logical when you think about it. By having a ratchet clause in the lease, commercial landlords can offer a lower base rent than they otherwise would have to offer in order to survive a downturn in the economy. And also, commercial leases tend to be a lot longer than residential. In my experience, residential leases typically are 1 year long. Occasionally, I've had 2-year leases where the tenant says, can we sign up for 2 years? Sure. But I don't hear of 5 or 10-year leases on residential properties. And in my experience, maybe I'm not a good residential property manager. At the end of that 1 year lease, more often than not, you just go to monthly. They're paying the rent anyway. And it goes to a monthly situation. You don't sign up for another year or another 2 years. Whereas with commercial leases, they tend to be longer. 5 years is typical. I've had 10-year leases. I've had 10-year leases with rights of renewal for another 10 years. The shortest commercial lease I've had is 1 year at a time. And usually that's for the likes of a convenience store or a fish and chip shop or something small like that. But even those, most of them are 2-year leases with rights of renewal for, say, 3 more periods of 2 years each. And just to be sure, those rights of renewal, they're for the sole benefit of the tenant, because it gives them the right, but not the obligation, to have another 2 years or another 10 years on the lease. Usually the lease will stipulate that within 90 days or whatever the period is, but 90 days are typical. Within 90 days of the expiry of the current lease term, the tenant has the right, but not the obligation, to indicate their preference as to whether they want to exercise their right of a renewal. So if it's a 5-year right of renewal, they let you know within 90 days, yes, I want to exercise it. Usually there's a rent review, and part of the decision as to whether or not they want to extend it is dependent on what the new rental will be. They were at $14 a foot, and the landlord might say, well, the market's shifted. We believe it's now $16 a foot. Do you want to exercise your right of renewal at $16 a foot? They may say no, they may say yes. So it's to the benefit of the tenant. But here's the really interesting thing. When you apply for finance through an institution like a bank or a finance company, the fact that there are rights of renewal there are taken into account. And from the lender's perspective, the bank's perspective, it's a more desirable deal if there are rights of renewal there. Well, your tenants aren't going to turn it down because there's no obligation to them. So when I create a new lease, I usually add in a couple of rights of renewal. The tenants love it and the bankers love it. And there's no detriment to me. Does it make sense? We're sort of jumping around a bit, but that's part of the fun there. There are all these aspects that come into play, and they all build up this picture that make commercial astoundingly good. And you don't have to be aware of all of them. That's the great thing. Don't think, well, I can't put an offer in on a commercial building yet. I don't know enough. No, if you waited until you knew all there was to know before you bought a commercial building, well, I wouldn't know any because I'm still learning stuff all the time. You don't need to learn it all. I want to give you another perspective, guys, that I think's fun, and then I'm going to open it up to questions again. And that is that I spent 8 years getting a PhD in electrical engineering. And most of you will recognize that that's not the easiest course around. That's a tough slog. And yet everything I learned, everything has been made redundant by new technology. That's quite a daunting thought. And yet what you learn on these Zoom sessions, what you learn by reading a book, any book, let alone mine on commercial real estate, it will stay with you forever. It doesn't change. What a mortgage is today, it was 50 years ago. Equity is the same. Collateral means the same thing. The ability to get a cell phone tower on the roof is about the same. Now, 50 years ago, we had no need for cell phone towers. There were no cell phones. So in that sense, it's changing, but it's changing so slowly. You could almost say that commercial real estate relative to electrical engineering is thoroughly and completely boring. But on the other hand, it's thoroughly and completely lucrative in a way that electrical engineering isn't for most people. So you don't seek your intellectual pleasures from investing in commercial real estate, although I find it pretty interesting. But you know, it can pay the bills in a way that no job ever will. It's a recurring theme. What thoughts have come up for anyone? Is this hitting the mark? Is this what you want to hear? What's on your mind right now? How would you react to what I'm saying? Yes, Dan.
Well, I mean, I know you asked if we had a specific property in mind that we would share. I don't have a specific property, but I do have some business partners in one of our other businesses that have been interested in hotels. So I guess I was curious to see what your thought process was on hotels. I know they were hit pretty hard by the pandemic, so maybe there are some really good deals to be had out there at this time in the right spot, right area.
So great question, Dan, and I want to put it back on you. If hotels have been hit very hard, and you say, so there might be some great deals, I think you mean that the price today might be lower than they would have been pre-pandemic because they've been hit hard.
Yes.
But surely the price is low because occupancy rates are down.
Right.
And so if the current owner can't get many occupants and it can't get many people to stay overnight, let's say you buy it for 2 million, whereas pre-pandemic it would have been 5 million. What are you going to do to get clients in there, to get guests overnight?
I guess the hope is that the economy will keep coming back and travel is on the uptick, and that's what's going to bring those occupants back, and not necessarily anything specific that we would do.
Well, that's good thinking. I applaud that, and it's true. If the economy's down, pandemic means people aren't traveling, they aren't using hotels much. So therefore the value of the hotels come down. You could buy it in the hope that between you buying it and the foreseeable future, the economy will get back to where it was somewhat before. The pandemic's sort of gone, people are using hotel rooms again, and you'll catch that rise in value. But the way I look at it, and that's totally valid, Dan, I'm not invalidating it at all, but I think there's another layer that maybe some of you haven't thought of. And that is, my brain naturally goes to, okay, so hotels aren't working very well. They're not generating enough revenue to pay their own debt commitments, right? To service their loans, whether it's called a mortgage or mezzanine finance or whatever. So what else could we do with those buildings? And what I've been looking at, and I'll hope to show some of them next time we get together, because 3 of the 4 commercial properties I'm looking at the moment happen to be hotels.
Apartment?
So, yes, exactly. Can we turn them into apartments? That's one thing. One that's very popular right now is turning them into assisted living, because you all know that the population of the US is increasing at the moment. But are you aware that the population of elderly, which is basically the baby boomers going through the age group, there's that big, bell-shaped curve of people born between 1946 and 64. There are, what is it? I think 10,000 of them retiring every day. The numbers are staggering. And that means that 10,000 are going into homes every day. That baby boomer bulge is going through the assisted living phase. And there's a chronic shortage of assisted living places at the moment. So I don't know if you're aware that to get a room in an assisted living place, it can cost you anywhere from $3,500 to $8,000 a month. That's with the 2 degrees of separation. So statistically, it's like 90% of them are in that price range. There's a chronic shortage. So they can't build assisted living facilities fast enough right now to meet the demand. And when you think about it, what do you need in an assisted living facility? You need a communal cooking place. Well, hotels tend to have that, right? A commercial kitchen. You need it such that there's elevator access to every floor. Well, most hotels, even the 2-story, 3-story, they all have elevators. So they're perfect for a conversion to assisted living. And that's one of the things we're looking at. So again, it's if you can think of an alternative use for that hotel building, then you don't need to wait for the economy to turn around and hope that you find someone who couldn't make that hotel work. They sell in desperation at rock bottom prices, you buy it, and then you happen to time it right so that prices come up. No, we turn it into something else: student accommodation, assisted living, geriatric care, memory care, Alzheimer's care, any of these sorts of things. And suddenly the value can go from 2 million back up to 5 million. So great thinking. And that's why one of the things I always do. Now, the most recent one I'm looking at, I haven't been there physically yet. That's one Kris and I were looking at going to together. It's a hotel in Nevada, but it's in the middle of nowhere. It's 3.5 hours drive from Las Vegas and about 3 hours drive from Salt Lake City. I wouldn't say it's on a tourist route, but it's got a casino component to it, and it's got a hotel component to it. And I don't know how readily that would convert to anything else, but maybe it doesn't need to, because there's, from memory, the numbers are, it generates about 1.6 million in hotel stays and about $900,000 in casino revenue. And for the life of me, I can't understand why people would throw coins at a one-armed bandit in the hope that they're going to be the 1 in 16 million who makes money from that machine. Because pre-pandemic, they were pulling in $1 billion in gambling money in Las Vegas every month. They hit the 1 billion a month level. And I know this because I used to go to Vegas a lot. Another story tangent, but I set out to buy one house a week for an entire year. And I ended up writing the book on it called 52 Homes in 52 Weeks. So I would sometimes fly up to Vegas for a day to see if I could buy a few more houses, by the way, without using any of my own money. And they're all cash flow positive. And I don't know if you know this, but there are about 130,000 hotel rooms in Vegas. In fact, on one corner of Tropicana and the Strip itself, there are 4 hotels there. There's the MGM Grand, the Tropicana, New York, and Excalibur. Those 4 hotels between them have more hotel rooms than the entire city of San Diego, which is kind of a tourist place anyway. So the number of hotel rooms is huge there. And I would fly to Vegas to try and find houses and try to get a hotel on the Strip from 130,000 available, and they'd all be full. And the average occupancy was about 1.6 people per room. And that means there were close to 200,000 people in Vegas on any night, most of whom go there for the gambling. They don't go there for the shows. They don't go there for the food. I think the shows in Vegas are the best in the world. I try and take in a show whenever I go to Vegas. But most people aren't there for the shows. They're not there for the restaurants. They're there for the gambling. 200,000 people having a go every night at one chance in 16 million of winning. And by the way, question for you, serious question. If you don't win, do they give you your money back? And the answer is no, of course not. And by the way, if you don't win, do they give you interest on your money that you've gambled? It's a silly question. No, of course not. Why do I ask those questions? Because while every night 200,000 people were having a crack at winning with one chance in 16 million, once a month in Las Vegas, as they do in just about every city in this country, but in Las Vegas, it's the first Tuesday of every month. Once a month, they'd have what's called a tax lien certificate sale. This is where people who have failed to pay their property taxes, the city council gives members of the public the option to pay their property taxes for them. So Fred Smith hasn't paid his property tax. He owes the city council $3,000, and you get the opportunity to pay the $3,000 on his behalf. Why would you do that? Because the city council then puts a lien on that property, which has a higher ranking than the first mortgage. In other words, if all, everything falls to pieces and that property gets sold, the first $3,000 of the proceeds goes to you, the lien holder on that property tax, before the bank gets any of its first possession mortgage money back. And in order for the property owner to get his house back, he has to pay you back the $3,000 you paid him, plus 16% interest. Now, the interest rate varies state by state. In Texas, it's 25%. And in Nevada, they have an 18-month period. It's called the redemption period to do that. In Texas, it's only 6 months. It varies state by state. But the point is this. Once a month, the first Tuesday of every month, you can go to Vegas and bid on paying off other people's property taxes, and you are guaranteed to get 16% within 18 months and your money back, failing which you get the property. So I just want to highlight it because it's kind of important. 200,000 people every night try for one chance at 60 million of winning the jackpot, and if they don't win, they don't get their money back and they don't get interest. And once a month, people turn up to the tax lien certificate sale for a guaranteed 16% return, plus your money back, failing which you get the house. And guess how many people turn up for that? On average, it's 50. And for the life of me, I don't understand that ratio. 50 people once a month versus 200,000 every night. But I tell you what, it's great, because if 200,000 turn up for the tax lien certificate sale for guaranteed 16% of your money back, then in a similar vein, everyone else would already be doing the deals that we're here to discuss that are so spectacular, that are so good, that I scratch my head thinking, why aren't more people doing this? And I've written books about it, as you all know, on how to do this and how to put helipads on the roofs of commercial buildings and increase the value by 2 million overnight. And it's real, guys. This isn't made up. I write books on it and still people don't do it. I mean, some do, but not enough that, you'd think it would change the world. And I think it's because we've been conditioned, as we discussed before, get a job, get an internship, put in a good effort, and make sure you get a tenured position. Then you can't be fired. That's really good. My parents did this. My parents worked harder than most people I know. And I think maybe that's why I had the zest to do it differently. At one stage, we lived in Australia. You might say we had an exotic lifestyle. I went to school in 6 countries. People think, were you in the, were my parents in the diplomatic service? I say, no. Were they in the military? No. Well, what were they? I said, I don't know. I think they were on the run. In Australia, we lived there for 2 years. My parents ran a convenience store, guys. I'm not proud of that, and I'm not ashamed of it. It's just a fact. 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day, they were in that store. All right. And then once a month, they brought money to the landlord. And I remember I was, I think, 10 at the time thinking, but the landlord didn't even put any time in behind the counter. Why would he get all that money? Maybe that's part of the reason why I think there's got to be a better way. I've always been thinking, is there a better way of doing this? How else can we do this? How else can we think about this? And that's why, and it's a long answer to your question, Dermot. It's a great question. When it comes to hotels, yes, the prices of them have been decimated, and it's those with creativity who get rewarded. In LA, I saw that some hotels were being converted from, when you think about it, a hotel is a place where you spend the night when you can't spend the night at home. And by that, I mean, you're traveling, you're in a different city on business, you've had business meetings all day, you've got to sleep somewhere. So you go to a hotel. It's a place where you spend the night when you're away from home. You need sometimes have dinner and breakfast, they have those facilities. So in LA with the pandemic, they changed some hotels, not to places where you spend the night when you're away from home, but to places where you spend the day when you're at home. And what do we mean by that? Well, no one could go to work anymore. Offices were closed, so you had to work from home. That's kind of cool. Everyone liked the idea in the beginning. Let's work from home through Zoom. But what if your spouse is also working from home and you're vying for who's got the louder voice around the kitchen table? And the kids are also at school at home. doing their school lessons over Zoom, and the dog is there wanting to go for more walks than normal because you're there, and the cat's getting your attention, and the parakeet and everything, then suddenly, you know, you don't want to be at home anymore. So can you go to a WeWork type situation, shared space? Well, no. With the pandemic, you were too close to each other. They have shared restrooms. So you think about it, a hotel gives you really good high-speed internet. You've got private restroom facilities. It's a quiet environment. You can spend all day there. And then at home, you can go back to your family. So there are a number of hotels that were doing really well during 2020 by converting their places where you spend the night when you're away from home to places where you spend the day while you're still in your own city. It's kind of clever. It's a different way of looking at it. And in this game of commercial real estate, your ability to look at things differently is rewarded with cash.
Hey, Dolf. Looks like we have a question from amazing answer, by the way. Like the ability to use creativity to find added value in buildings. Absolutely amazing. Sun Young's had a question here for half a minute. Sun Young, go ahead and unmute yourself and fire your question at Dolf Daru.
Okay, Dolf, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi there.
Okay, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you today?
Good. It's really exciting to learn from you. I'm very excited. And I'm so glad that you mentioned about how we can, you know, convert hotels to meet the demands of the day. Because I was mulling around, I was thinking about the very same thing, how we could get these hotels and convert it to apartments because there's a shortage of residential places. But you sharing about assisted living, that's even better. So very exciting. I still don't know all the pieces as to, you know, how to go from hotels to converting to assisted living, but you know, I mean, the idea by itself is very exciting, and I'm sure that from learning from you, we'll be able to figure things out. Couple things that I have a question on is that one is there a specific market you would focus on? I work remotely, so I can be anywhere I want to, and so I was thinking what cities and areas would be a good for commercials. I can go ahead and move there, actually working from there, and look around and find properties.
So a couple of things. Firstly, I tend not to pick a city with commercial. With residential, yes, I pick the city I want to be in. And Kris does this very well, and he's got a system for, you know, evaluating over 360 areas in the United States, and then he's got an algorithm, I guess, criteria to figure out which are the top 3 that he wants to focus on. And I think when it comes to residential, that's a very smart way of doing it. When it comes to commercial, I don't so much pick the city that I want to invest in and then only look for commercial deals there. I tend to look, like when it comes to hotels, I'll look at hotels all over the country. And then if some are in what I would call a backwater, and I don't want to insult anyone if I happen to pick a town where you happen to live, that would be horrible. But not really, because even if you were to live there, that doesn't mean to say you have to invest there. By the way, Phoenix has traditionally been one of the fastest growing cities in the United States for the last 50 years, both in terms of population growth and capital value growth of real estate. And I've always maintained there's a very strong correlation between the two. If you want to know which places are going to have real estate that rises in value fast, check where the population's rising. For many years, we've had about 7,000 people move into Phoenix every year, and only about 3,000 every month, and only 3,000 move out. So every month there's an extra 4,000 people that need houses and podiatrists and car tire repair shops and florists and you name it. So the city has been growing fast, and people say, well, you're lucky you invest in Phoenix because you happen to live here. And I say, no, you've got it around the wrong way. I choose to live in Phoenix because I want to invest here. So Phoenix has got that high growth that is a great criterion to help consider whether or not you should buy something. But as I'm saying, when I invest in commercial, I don't choose the city first and then only look in commercial in those cities. I look, for instance, for hotels right throughout the country and see what comes up. And I've been looking at hotels in oddball places like Laredo in Texas, and Midlands, which is by Odessa, which is also in Texas. Places I wouldn't normally think of going. And then I look at what's happening to the population there. And some places I've rejected, like I found spectacular deals on the surface, they seem spectacular in the capital of Wyoming, which is Cheyenne. And I don't know if many of you have been there. It's a nice enough place. The views there, the plains, it's grand. But the commercial center of town, right until the last time I've been there, I wouldn't call it bustling. In fact, it's the opposite of bustling. And I'd be very cautious about buying anything there, just from a long-term growth perspective. But there are other places where I've stumbled across things, like in Georgia. I'm looking at a hotel at the moment. I'm going to see if I can discuss it next time. But I'll be looking at a hotel in Georgia, which is just over 300 rooms, going for about $4 million, which is a ridiculously cheap price per room. And it's in a town of about 40,000 people. Of itself, that's not what I'd call a bustling metropolis that's worth looking into further. However, it's got good cash flow. It's got a showgrounds there that is used for multiple horse events every year. It's on a common route going between Atlanta and all the places further south, going down to Florida. So it's just got good traffic. So to me, it doesn't really matter where it is so much as does this particular building perform well. So that's one criteria I'd say. So broaden your mind as to where you might invest. If it's a commercial property, the management will be a lot easier than a residential property anyway. If you own houses in your own city, you could consider managing them yourself, or you could have a property manager in there. With commercial, they're so easy to manage in relative terms because the tenants tend to look after a lot of it themselves that I don't mind if it's in different parts of the country. In fact, commercial is easy to manage overseas as well. I have far fewer problems with foreign commercial buildings than foreign residential buildings.
Got it.
And you might have, do you have a follow-up question? Because I want to get back to what you said earlier too.
Oh, I don't want to stop you from teaching me more about that, but I do have one more question.
Oh no, ask the question, ask it right now.
Okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned Cheyenne, Wyoming, because there's I don't have all the details, but my brother-in-law, somebody came to him and asking him if he's interested in buying this commercial property in downtown Cheyenne. It has a restaurant on it, just one building. It's the monthly rent is $6,000, so that's $72,000 a year, and they want to sell that property for $1.2 million.
All right. Well, at 720,000, it would be a 10% return. So at 1.2, it's going to be slightly under half. It'd be about what, 5.8% just off the top of my head.
Yep, right, 6%. Yep,
6%. I wouldn't call that a very good return.
I would say that too.
Yeah, and just to let everyone know, the more desirable a location, the lower the return. It's the lower the cap rate. So if you're on Wall Street in New York, cap rates there are 1.5%, 2%, because everyone wants to own real estate on Wall Street because you'll always have a tenant. So they're very desirable. But if you're in the backwaters of nowhere, and I picked Cheyenne, Wyoming, thinking no one would know anyone who's looking at buying there. You're the brother looking at. But let's pick an imaginary backwater of nowhere. The returns would have to be 25% before someone invests there because there's no population growth. So before spending 1.2 million in Cheyenne, Wyoming, I would get on a plane and fly there and see how many people are in that restaurant. I would see how many vacancies there are next door, because the last time I was there, about 1 building in 3 in downtown Cheyenne was vacant. And that shows that the population's been drifting out. And by the way, what was left wasn't exactly in a good state of repair and beautifully painted with people walking around. It was like a ghost town. That might have changed. But remember, your ability to get benefit from that 1.2 million investment is dependent solely on the tenant's ability to pay you rent. And their ability to pay you rent is dependent on the quality of the food they cook and the number of people they've got that they can sell that food to. Like, how busy are they? And I would have thought that to sell something in Cheyenne, the cap rate would have had to be higher, meaning the price would have had to be lower. To get a 6% return, I can get that here still in Phoenix. I would, so I'd be a bit cautious about that. Does that make sense, everyone? How I'm saying you've got to see how desirable a place is to know if 6% is a good return.
Yeah, that makes sense. Are there any other considerations, like how big the lot is, if there's other ways to generate revenue from that location?
Well, there are. I mean, let's say it's a restaurant where there's no land, then parking is going to be a problem for the diners there. On the other hand, if it's a small, or if the building's the same size, but it's on a big piece of land, then you can have on-site car parking. You can offer that car parking to other people during the day for office hours. You might be able to build storage units depending on the zoning. So yes, any extra land can be put to some good use. But again, before you build storage units there, you've got to ask yourself, is there demand for storage units there? And that's the big question. I think it's time to go there and have a look. And then by looking there, you might say, yes, it's great. This place is booming. Maybe because of the pandemic, it is booming. And maybe you'll find other commercial buildings there as well that are even better deals or equally good. But you might find that, hey, no, this is not a place I want to go to. And you mentioned before that you weren't really sure what's involved in converting a hotel to assisted living, for instance. I mean, again, it depends on the hotel and how big the rooms are, but we've all stayed in hotels. I tend to live at them in times, but you walk into a hotel room and usually on the left or right, there is the bathroom. So you've got a doorway going to a bathroom, which has the hand basin and the shower and the lavatory and sometimes a bath as well. And then you continue past the bathroom and you've got the bedroom with the TV, and sometimes it might be an easy chair to sit at and a desk to work at. Occasionally, two adjacent rooms have a connecting door so that if there's a family there, they don't need to go through the corridor to see if the kids are sleeping well and all that sort of thing. So my idea as to how you convert a hotel to assisted living is you leave one hotel room the way it is. It's got the bathroom and the bedroom. And then the adjacent room, you convert the bathroom into a kitchen, because you think about it, it's already got the plumbing and the wiring and the electric for all the appliances you need and the kitchen sink and the stove. And you convert the other bedroom of the second unit into a living room. And if there's no connecting door, they're already put one in. So now by having two adjacent rooms, you've got the kitchen and the living room and the bathroom and the bedroom. It's perfect for an assisted living facility, probably a bit bigger than they'd have in a custom built assisted living facility, because there they tend to have one suite that's the bedroom, living room and kitchen and bathroom almost all together. So it's actually very salubrious and it lends itself perfectly to a conversion. And when you see the numbers, and look them up, I mean, don't take my word for it, go online and see what the growth of the population is in the States, and then see what the growth of the elderly is. Now, it's a limited time, because when the baby boomer bulge goes through not just the assisted living facilities, but to put it bluntly, when they go through the funeral homes as well, there's going to be a point in time when there's going to be a collapse in demand for assisted living facilities. But that's not going to happen for decades. That's like 3 or 4 decades out. And even then, if you're so blessed to be around, then you'll be able to figure out, well, what can we do with them now? There'll be an alternative use. You know, it might be a training ground before we send manned crews to Mars, where they need to be in isolation, or I'm making it up, but you never know.
Yeah.
Right? There will be a use that we haven't thought of yet.
Yeah. Great ideas.
Okay. Well, I hope you find this a little bit inspirational. And I think what you might want to do, if you no obligation here, but it's voluntary, but maybe get some photos of the Cheyenne property, the restaurant that is it your brother that he's looking at? And then for our next session, if you're willing to, just show us, even if you've already decided that, hey, it's not a good deal, but share it with us and let everyone see your logic as to why maybe you don't think it's a good deal or why you think it is a good deal. And then we might be able to give you good ideas, like even though your brother thinks it's not good, we might be able to say, well, how about turning it into this, or vice versa? Because what I want to avoid is all you look at is deals that I or that Kris and I bring to the table, because that will be educational, but I want you to feel, hey, you're in control of this. You're finding the deals. This goes for all of you. Dan, with your question from a moment ago too, see if you can find some of these deals to present to the group, because then you'll know what it feels like and smells like to be finding them and sourcing them.
Yeah, and Dolf,
yes,
Dolf, if I can, I would love to just challenge every person in this group. And, you know, Casey, I know Luke, you're here right now, and Angie, I would love to challenge in the Facebook group that before we meet again, I would love for everyone to go and find at least 3 projects, 3 properties, 3 blank blank buildings. Take a picture of it, get the basic information on square footage, maybe some history on what it was previously used for, grab some information on its price. And I would just drop that in that Facebook feed and let everyone chew on it and have some thoughts and think a little bit, and post it there and drop an idea or two of what you thought, you think you could do with it. What it's doing is it's getting you in the habit, because for just a moment, I want to just reinforce this. I want you to think about this. When I buy a residential piece of property with you, every year or two, we've got to take tenants out. We've got to put new tenants in. But if you do a deal here with Dolf and I, or Dolf shows you how to do a deal, I want you to think about this. You've already made your money going into the deal. You would have never signed on it if it didn't entirely make sense. With residential, we know our ROI, and with time, we accumulate more and more return. But on these commercial deals, you're walking into it and you have a different set of knowns that have the possibility to outperform residential significantly. And by the way, I'm glad you have residential with me, because now you have standards. You have something that you can compare to and say, well, you know what, if I am going to sink money into some kind of deal or do commercial, or maybe it is truly a no money down, I need to see that this deal actually makes sense. I have to see that this deal is actually going to be making me money. What I love about this commercial approach is that by the time you sign on the dotted line, you may have just signed on one of the most exciting deals that you've ever done. And if you think about that for just a moment, I think that it is actually really, really exciting. So I want to challenge you between now and the next month. We have this Facebook page. I want to challenge you to post 3 vacant properties, even if you don't know what you're doing. And I'm like, okay, I snapped a picture and I got some basic info, and I called on it, but I don't really know what I'm doing. Dolf is the first person that inspired me to do real estate when he taught me this one thing. He said, look at 100 homes, 100 projects, 100 deals, 100 properties. And he says, if you look at 100, you're likely to find one that will end up being that deal of the decade. And so just by going out there and starting to look and post, think about it this way. I might only be asking you to find and post 3 of them. And maybe you look at more than that. But between as many people in this group, we're going to be looking at 50 projects. There's a good chance in this next month we're actually going to be greenlighting a deal. But also, just so you guys know, I'm going to be this next month doing due diligence with Dolf on these 4 particular commercial projects. We almost last week caught a helicopter to try to catch one that wasn't too far, out of reach for us. But Dolph's actually done a lot of the legwork. He's actually got offers in on some of these. So I just want to create this clarity that don't be waiting on Dolf and I, because yours might be the deal that you do, or it might be one that you say, hey, I want to let other people in on, or hey, Kris wants to get in on a deal that I found, Dolf wants to get in. All of those become possibilities. And that's where this is the power of this network. A year goes by from now, and the goal should be that we're all in some fantastic, exciting deal, at least one, if not hopefully a whole lot more. But the question is, did you just wait for Dolf to do it? If you really want a life-changing experience, challenge yourself to say, I'm going to keep looking at deals and I'm going to keep throwing them in, even if I don't know what I'm doing, because we're going to analyze them. We're going to talk about them. And eventually I might be the one that brings the deal that not only I do or other people want to do. I'm going to share one last thought on this. I have a buddy who said, Kris, I'm doing these commercial medical centers. And it says, I'm like, what is it? It's like a little surgical center. I'm like, well, what are they doing? He says, doesn't matter. It's medical. And I kind of pressed the bill. I said, no, I really want to know. He says, well, it's a little embarrassing, but basically they're erectile dysfunction clinics. But apparently they're doing really well. And he said, he's got people putting in $150,000. They make all their money back in the first year. They own the property as well. And he talked about the ROI, and I thought, wow, that sounds really good. And he had committed to do 6 of these. I said, well, let me in, let me write a check. And guess what? I couldn't write a check to get in the deal. I have to wait a year before they open up the next round of clinics. And then I'm quote unquote, maybe first in line. Well, I'm not going to bank on that. It's an option. This mastermind is going to work different, because if Dolf and I find something that we're going to be doing and there's room, we're opening it up and we're letting you in. And trust me, if Dolf and I are doing it, it's because it's a good deal. I'm just challenging you that your experience will be unique this year if the deal that you do yourself or that we get in on is a deal that you find, because you might be like my buddy that says, actually, thank you. I found the project. Thank you for vetting me. I'm going to take this one down. It's going to have $400,000 a year positive cash flow. And that is literally one deal, and it's my ticket of getting out of my job, or I'm out of my job, but that money would be meaningful. So, I'm not really going to make that available to the group. No one's going to fault you or say that that's wrong. We're happy for you. We want you to just do a deal. Aside from the deals that, you guys are obviously on Dolph's list for life now, which means beyond this year, you'll always have an opportunity when there's room to participate in deals that he's choosing to do. So I just wanted to drop all that I'm excited about. With residential, I buy it, and then there's a really exciting day when I sell the property. With commercial, the really exciting day is especially here when you buy the property. And that's just one of the noteworthy differences on why I'm here doing deals with you guys with Dolf.
Thanks for that, Kris. I fully agree with everything you've said. And notice that I've never said, by next session, I'm going to have a deal that you can participate in, because that's not my commitment to you. My commitment is not to find a deal, any deal, and I just need to fulfill on it. Who cares what kind of a deal it is? No, I'm only going to present a great deal, a sensational deal. And they aren't there for the picking. If you come across 100 deals, it's not as if 93 of them are sensationally good. There might only be one good one amongst them. And if there's not, we're going to have to look at another 100 to find a good one. So my commitment is to show you deals, and maybe the commitment should be to show them to you anyway and explain why I think these ones aren't particularly good. I reject most deals because they're just not quite good enough. And that means that by the time we have one that we think, well, this one's really good, it truly is a good deal. It's worth participating in. And Kris is absolutely right. And I want to bring up an analogy. I'm not sure if I should. I hope it doesn't come back to bite me, because there's no overtone. I don't want to be politically incorrect or anything. But do you all remember that time when you were out dating and, you were all nervous about asking that cute girl or that cute guy, whatever your gender is, out on a date, but you didn't know if you had the gumption, and you thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if we could go to that dance together or go to the movies, but you didn't quite have the gumption to do it. And then eventually you plucked up the courage and you went there, and that moment, that not knowing whether he or she would say yes or no, was kind of an exciting moment. To me, that's certainly something that I remember. And looking at real estate is, in a bizarre way, a little bit like that. There's the excitement of being on the chase and not knowing if it's going to be a good deal. And, it's when you then get a deal where it turns out that it really is good and you can put in an offer, and then you're wondering whether the offer will be accepted or not, that gets to a pretty exciting phase. And it's a bit like being on the hunt, and you are on the hunt. In this case, it's for a great deal. And we're not just after anything, just like you wouldn't want to date just anything. You've all got different ideas as to what constitutes something that's worth pursuing. And in real estate, I always say this, the beauty of real estate is not in the exterior. I don't much care what it looks like. The beauty is in the balance sheet. Do the numbers work? Fall in love with the numbers. Don't fall in love with the way the deal looks. And so, I don't know if I mentioned this because, sorry, Kris, you want to say something there.
Well, I was just going to say, Dolf, I learned two things about you right now. The first thing that I learned is that you're not shallow. You're looking for an amazing, extraordinary person to be in a relationship, because it's really what's under that matters. But I also learned that you're okay being in an open relationship, because you'll date 20 of these girls at the same time.
I'm trying to see how one could conclude that from what I just said, but anyway.
Well, I was just joking that you could literally do 20 real estate deals and be completely satisfied, but want to go on the hunt again. You're not going to marry one commercial deal for life. You're going to marry as many as possible. It was a poor attempt at a joke.
I do like it. And I would point out that you're not in violation of any moral or ethical thing if you do 20 commercial deals at a time. But
exactly.
Yes.
The more the merrier, actually, right?
With real estate, yes. But in order to win the heart you really want with the person, then you should not do 20 at the same time, like date them or whatever. Anyway,
good advice.
Yeah, but I take your point, and it's all good. And listen, guys, it's all your attitude. And one of the reasons why Kris and I get on so well is we've got this relaxed attitude, even though we're very focused on the outcome. Like when it comes to real estate deals, we want to make sure it's a great deal. When it comes to working with people, and I think Kris and I share this, and pitch in and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're passionate about making sure people don't just get what they think they're going to get, that they get more. One of the brief discussions we had beforehand is how long should this go? Should we stick to the timeline in order to honor any time commitments people have with babysitters or partners or whatever? Or are we allowed to go over because we want to over deliver? And we both unanimously said, oh my gosh, over deliver. That's just a passion we've got. And it's a passion for excellence. And you'll see this as a common thread amongst people who are successful. They all have the similar attitude, you know, sloppy in small things, sloppy in big things.
Well, and I just want to add, Dolf, and for everyone listening, because I know that there's some of your comments I've been reading where some of you are like, okay, I'm here to learn, I'm here to grow, but man, I really want to get some deals done, or I'd love to participate and do. I see Trey Sykes is like, I'm burning right now. My business is having a little too much success. Let's go do a commercial deal. And Dolf is doing a great job setting up the expectation here, which is these commercial deals can come in fits and stats, I think is the way he put it, which means that you might wait months and months and months and months before you find a good one, or it could literally just be raining and you do 3, 4, or 5 all at once. I've always had a little bit of I think all people that I meet have superpowers, right? Like there's things that we're good at. My superpower is that when I am ready for a deal, the deal just always comes and it manifests really fast. So without putting any pressure on Dolf whatsoever, I'm just confident that with what we're doing together, the deal is going to come together pretty fast. Just because that's my superpower that's my mojo and faith that I'm going to be adding to the process here. I'm excited to go.
No, and that's great. And my commitment is that however long it takes to find a deal, 6 months after we've done it, we'll all say, that was a great deal. So I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going to do a deal just because we're all excited. We're in the moment. We want to do a deal. I want it to be a sensational deal in 6 months as well as today. So with those merging ideas, I think we're in for a fun ride. And the real trick is not just to let you participate in deals, but that is absolutely what we're going to do. But my desire, my aim, what I want in my heart is that you all have the ability to figure out for yourselves what constitutes a great deal. Now, if in order to learn that you participate with us on 6 deals on the way through, so much the better. But even if you choose not to, I want you to have the confidence that you can go out, know where to find a great deal, know how to analyze it, know how to negotiate it, know how to negotiate the finance for it, and know how to manage it with confidence so that you say, wow, that's one of the best things we ever did. Why aren't more people doing this? That's what I continually ask myself. Why aren't more people doing this? Because when you're onto a good thing, that's how good it becomes. So with that, I want to remind you all that what Kris just said, it's a great idea. Find 3 deals, even if you suspect they're not the best deals or what deals you want to do. But by working with them, by actually figuring out whether they're good or not, that's how you learn. And that's how you know whether we're onto a good deal or not. So I really encourage you to do this. And as Tom Lehrer, the famous mathematician turned songwriter, said, life is like a sewer. What you get out of it depends on what you put into it. Well, that's a bizarre thing to say, but it really hits at home that you will get out of this course what you put into it. It's not just what Kris and I come up with in terms of spectacular deals. If you see this as just a ticket to get in on a great deal, that'll probably work. But your enjoyment of it and your ability to share with your friends and family why you did it and why it's a good deal will go up infinitely to the extent that you're looking at deals yourself. And you know what? Even if you do 6 deals with us and you come across a spectacular deal in your own, your own town or city, so much the better if you can achieve that. So anyway, my view is that you should all get in on it, look at deals, find them, analyze them. And you might think, well, this isn't very good. And we can come up with a different angle. Like, hands up those who thought of air rights up until today, spending 80 grand a year so that no one else can touch the space above a building. I mean, that's the sort of thing we're talking about. And you can buy air rights, you can sell them, you can benefit from having them, you can benefit from someone else not having them. I love it. It's just a game where there are infinite possibilities. All right. With that being said, are there any questions that have come up from what we've said? And Su Young, I presume that's answered your questions, has it? Yeah, okay. Anyone else? Yes. Let me just see. Now I've got to.
Hey, Dolf, how's it going?
It's Micah. Hey there. How you doing? Where are you calling from today?
I'm in Nebraska right now. So,
oh, cool.
Yep.
Excellent.
Nebraska. My question is just as far as practically going through deals. I know, like in my area, I know of some open or vacant commercial properties, but what's the best way for us to go about vetting deals? I know for single family and for some other stuff I do for residential, I'll use PropStream or LoopNet or a couple different other resources like that. But do you recommend, what do you recommend as far as just a software or something just to find, just to look at deals?
You mean to find commercial deals?
Yeah. Yep.
And there's no one single mechanism that I think is best, and I think everyone should do that. I think use a variety and make sure you vary it up, because what I find is that the deals that come to me that end up being really good came from the most unlikely and unexpected source. So
Okay.
LoopNet has, for those you're not familiar, it's loopnet.net, I think, right? Not .com. It's got some commercial deals that appear there that can be very good. Marcus Millichap, they're very good. But, you know, by the time Marcus Millichap has a deal on their web broadcast, a lot of people have looked at it.
Right.
Sometimes the best thing to do is in your city, go and visit over the course of the next month, 5 different commercial agents, and just go in there and say, listen, I'm a commercial investor. I want to know what sort of deals you have on the table. And one of the first questions they're going to ask you is, well, what sort of price range are you looking at? And, you know, you don't want to say, well, anything, you name it, I can afford it. That sounds a little bit pompous. But if you can say something like, listen, the price range is not really as important as the quality of the deal, because I actually work with a group of investors. By the way, do you guys work with a group of investors or not? Yes, it's us. If you found a $50 million deal that was sensationally lucrative, 22% return, I'm making it up, but just go with me and imagine for a moment, and you couldn't take it down on your own, do you think you might be able to bring it to us? And between Kris and Casey and myself and everyone else here, that we might figure out, yes, so you can absolutely say with your hand in your heart, I'm working with a group of like-minded investors, so the size of the deal doesn't really matter. Our sweet spot might be in the $1 to $5 million range. You make up the numbers, because generally when it's in that price range, it's too small for the big REITs to consider it. So you don't have competition from the REITs, and all the mom and pop investors tend to be out. Depending on your city, it might be in the 5 to 20 million range. You can say that tends to be our sweet spot. But I'll consider any deal. And I'm not averse to doing a small deal. I think you've all seen photos of my smallest commercial deal, which was a $59,000 acquisition. It was a retail shop on a corner, 42,000 cars going by every day. Why is that important? It's noisy, it's smelly, but there are also a lot of eyes that can see what this shop had. And it happened to be a fish supply shop. They sold raw fish there. And they did a roaring trade. The place was never vacant for one day that I owned that property, but 59,000. I'm not averse to doing that. That was giving me 160% return. And I'm not kidding you. It cost me, after the bank put in their money, only $3,000 of cash going in, and I was pulling out $5,000 a year. And you might say, well, that's not very much money. Well, it's not, but you don't need to have many of those for it suddenly to add up. So size, I was going to say size doesn't matter, but it doesn't. You can do a small deal, you can do a big deal. So you go to one of these agents and say, I'm in the market. You may not have something today, but I want you to have my card here. I want you to take note when you come across a deal that's got a bit of a twist or an angle, or there might be something else we can do with the property. Give him ideas if he's struggling to keep up with you. I want you to call me. By the way, maybe it's time for you all to get new business cards. Do you still use business cards or not really these days? Most of you. You do? Let me hazard a guess. I don't have any right in front of me now, but most people have their name in quite big letters, John Smith, and then underneath they have the title, Chief Operating Officer or something. And I want you, next time you get business cards made, and they're pretty cheap these days, have your name in a font size that can be read, but don't make it too big. And then in bigger letters underneath, put real estate investor. Because what's really important to anyone else is not what your name is. I don't want to be rude, but no one cares what your name is. No one cares what my name is. It's what you do. You're a real estate investor. And often the less you put on, the better. If they only contact you by email or phone, put John Smith, real estate investor, mobile phone and email, and that's it. And you'll be surprised at what that can do. And then, as you've probably heard me say through whatever channels you might have listened to me, if you're at the dentist in the chair and they've got things in your mouth that make it hard to talk, and they say, well, what have you been up to lately? Even if it's the assistant asking you that, instead of saying, well, not much, you know, I had to mow my lawns last Saturday and the kids are home from school. Say, hey, I'm in the market for spectacular commercial real estate deals. If you hear of any, would you let me know? Here's my card. And you might think, what's a dental assistant going to do with that card? Will she think you're hitting on it? No, you're not. Right? And you'll be surprised. Will she come back within a month with a deal? Maybe not, probably not. But if you've given out 50 of those cards to random people, you'll be surprised that maybe the dentist receptionist calls you and says, hey, aren't you that client we've got who's the real estate investor? Because you mentioned it to the dental assistant. Her brother has come up with his neighbor who's got a commercial building they're selling. He doesn't know how to sell it. We thought we'd give you a call. Even if that only happens once in your life, it's worth it. And I'm telling you, it'll happen more than once. It's an attitude. It's not mechanics of how you do it. It's an attitude. Your attitude has to be, there is a deal out there. All of you right now are paying a massive price. There's an opportunity cost for being on the Zoom call. And that opportunity cost is you're not out there finding a deal that's on the market right now that you don't know about. But hopefully the fact that you're missing out on a deal by being on the Zoom call will be more than compensated for by hopefully the inspiration and motivation you get to go out and find the next deal that you wouldn't have known about had you not been on this call, right? They are out there, folks. Someone is going to do an astoundingly good deal this week because they didn't watch TV and they weren't down at the pub drinking and they weren't having a popsicle, whatever. They're out there finding this deal. And I'm hoping you get this inspiration, including you, Ryan. You seem to find that one amusing, but it's true. They're a great deal. So when you're driving around, when you're going to work, if you've got, a 10-mile commute, take a different route every day and keep your eyes open for a for sale by owner sign or a commercial building that looks run down and the windows are dirty. They haven't been washed in months and the grass is long and trash is blown up against the fence line. And it might just be someone that owned it that's passed away and the heirs don't know what to do with it. And when you call and say, hey, what's up with this building? It looks run down, it looks abandoned. They might say, what a blessing you called. We just want to get rid of it. Is that going to happen every day? No, but it only needs to happen one day a year for you to find yet another spectacular deal that you've turned into something that they never even thought of. Make sense?
Awesome. Thank you, Dolf.
Cool. I sort of go on these tangents and forget which question we're answering, but I hope that gives you a sense of what you can do, Micah. Do you pronounce it Micah?
Yeah. Yep.
Cool name.
Thank you.
So yeah, it's an attitude. And, Kris and I, we're going to be coming across things. We have more properties to look at than we have time to look at sometimes. And honestly, we did consider looking at this one. It was a hotel which had a casino attached. And there was no time to drive there and back in that day. And we literally looked at, got a quote to get a helicopter ride there. It's not a matter of getting a ride in a helicopter. It's just a time thing. And we couldn't fit it with our schedules. I'm doing the numbers right now. I'm doing some in-depth analysis on it. If it looks promising, at some stage we'll have to go there. Obviously, I use Google Earth to look at the property, the surroundings, how far is it from other centers? Is it a great place for people to spend the night if they're driving through town, or is it out on a limb? I've got a contract in on one. It looks as though we're going to close on it. It's a little motel. It's a 24-unit motel here in Arizona in a place called Eloy. No one's really heard of it, E-L-O-Y, but it happens to be the world center for skydiving. And people come from all over the world. The Danish army will send a team in here every so often to do training. And I think one of the reasons why it's the world center for skydiving, for all the downfalls of Arizona, it's so ridiculously hot here. And right now, I don't know what it is in Fahrenheit, but it's 34.5 Celsius. So that's over 100 degrees. What it means is if you have a week of skydive training and you book it for whatever month of the year, here in Arizona, you can go skydiving. The weather is nearly always good, right? Whereas in many parts of Europe and down under in Asia, you've got weather to deal with. And, let's have a barbecue Saturday 3 weeks from now. And if it's raining, we'll do X, Y, or Z, or we'll postpone it a week. Whereas here, we never postpone things because of the weather. It's nearly always great weather. So anyway, 24-unit motel. It's a bit dependent on this town remaining the world center of skydiving, because without that, there'd be no reason for people to go there. But it's being offered at $525,000. Guys, that won't buy a house in many suburbs here in Phoenix. And for that $525,000, you're getting 24 units that are currently run as a motel, that are often occupied by people in the skydiving world, the people folding the parachutes, the people coming from overseas to go skydiving, the people coming domestically. These deals exist. And if you don't believe they exist, you won't find them, because when someone gives one to you on a silver platter, you'll say, no, this doesn't exist. And your theory that it doesn't exist will be validated in your mind. Whereas if you're open to it, and well, there are people who do things for crazy reasons. In this case, the crazy reason is the motel was owned by a woman and she passed away, and her daughter doesn't really want anything to do with it. And she put it on the market and came up with the price. I didn't come up with the price. These things happen. Are they normal? No. Are they typical? No. Do they happen every minute? No. Do they happen every week? I think they do. That's why I've got that saying, the deal of the decade comes along about once a week. If you don't believe it, if that sounds too good to be true, then you won't find them. But if you believe it and it's just open to the possibility, you will find it. So I've had to go down, I've had to drive down to Eloy a couple of times. It's about 1.5 hours from my home. It's not that far. I take a different route every time. I look at what else is there. One thing that struck me, I took photos, maybe I should show some, is there are acres and acres and acres of solar farms. These are farms with photovoltaic solar panels, and they're on a motorized rig. They can only go in one dimension, but they face, the east at the beginning of the day, and they slowly rotate over until they face west where the sun sets. And I hope for their sake they're viable, because we have a lot of sun here in Arizona, and it would seem to be a cool thing to do, is to generate electricity from these solar farms. But I wouldn't have known about that had I not taken a different route each time. And I'm looking at other kinds of shops and things, other commercial premises. What else would work here? And, it's just a matter of thinking differently, so that you're constantly thinking, what else could we put this building to? What other use could we put this building to? Who's going to present a property next week? Well, that's cool. All right. Hey, if by chance, I said next week, but I mean next time. If by chance you don't find one, don't think that your world has come to an end. Ask yourself why you haven't found one. But nothing is an absolute in life. Nothing is. But, what you get out of it will depend on what you put into it. And your ability to know whether a deal that Kris and I present to you, where you might be able to participate, for you to know in your heart whether it's good enough, will be largely dependent on what you looked at yourselves. Because the more you get that smell and taste of what it's like to look on LoopNet, or go driving around, or on another website, or visit a commercial agent and say, what have you got on your books that you would say is your best deal? The more you know that feeling, the more you'll know whether Kris and I have stumbled across a great deal for you. Vernon, I see you've got your hand up again. Oh, and Sandy does too. I mentioned you first, Vernon. Let's go to you first, if that's all right.
Should I go?
Yes, please.
Yeah, one quick question. I think, should we reach out to financing as well, or how would that work? Someone local commercial finance agents, or?
So is your question that if you find a great property, should you initiate the process of trying to get funding for it already?
So should we start contacting the commercial financial agents and then start the dialogue that, okay, you're in the market, or should we do it once we find the property?
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, I would wait until you've got the property, because otherwise it's going to be a pretty empty conversation. Hey, I'm interested in financing for a commercial deal. Okay, which city is it in? Well, I'm not sure yet. How big is it? I don't know yet. He's going to say, come back when you know the deal.
Because real estate, retail is you have to get the pre-approval first, only then you start, that it goes the other way around. So.
Yes, because it's different from residential. With residential, you can often get pre-approval. And with residential, they tend to want to know what your personal circumstances are, what's your job, what's your income, and they take that into account. Let's step forward a bit. Let's say you own 10 commercial buildings and you're looking at getting funding on the 11th. The banker or the financier, if it's a different kind of institution, they're not going to care whether or not you have a job, let alone what the salary is. They don't care. In fact, they'd probably prefer that you don't have a job so that you can focus on the real estate at hand. So that works for your 11th acquisition. It probably is true for your 10th. Somewhere between your 10th and your first acquisition, there might be a bit of a switch over where they're going to want to know that you've got a job maybe, or some income coming in. But at the end of the day, the merits of a commercial building will justify whether or not it can be funded.
Sure.
Again, because even banks realize that a commercial lease is a more powerful document than a residential tenancy agreement. Let's face it, in many parts of the country, if you break your residential tenancy agreement by not paying the rent, for instance, as a landlord, there's not much you can do for a while. Arizona is one of the most liberal states here. The tenant's got 5 days to pay or quit, and then there's trouble. But in California, they cannot pay for 90 days before you're even allowed to take any action. That's on the residential side. But most commercial lease documents have very strict clauses that the government doesn't interfere with, that say if the rent's not paid within 3 days of the due date, there'll be a penalty charge of 10%. And then interest will accrue at the rate of 1% per month on the amount outstanding. And if you still don't pay, then very often you can do what's called distrain for rent. That means you can seize the premises. Now, you can't seize anyone inside those premises. That's kidnapping or unlawful detainment or whatever. But you can seize the plant and stock and equipment and machinery. And then you can advertise it, certain minimum number of ads, minimum size, minimum number of days, and then you auction the equipment in the plant. And you can apply the proceeds to paying the backlog of rent and the penalty and the interest to be sure any surplus after that has to go back to the tenant. But because you can do all these things, because it's within your power to do these things, the tenant knows that. And that's why if a tenant can't pay both the rent on the home he's renting and the rent on the commercial premises he's renting, he'll tend to not pay the rent on the home because there's little the residential landlord can do in that case. So it's a more stable income. So yeah, I would wait until you've got the property in sight and only then worry about the financing.
Sure. Thanks, Dolf.
Great question. And Sandy, are you there? You had your hand up too at one stage. Oh, there you go. You're still muted, Sandy. So if we just wait 2 seconds until you're unmuted, and then we'll be able to hear. There you go.
Okay. I was raising my hand to say that I would have some deals to look at next time, but as long as I am on now, I just wanted to say that probably across the country, there are Girl Scout camp and Boy Scout camps. They're going up for sale because those two organizations didn't have a lot of camps during COVID and need to sell off property in order to keep their organizations going. And I think about some of these as nice properties for another use, maybe for a subdivision, because they normally have a lake centrally located in there. It would be probably a lot of problems with maybe getting plumbing to the various site, but that's just one of the things I was thinking about bringing next time.
I love that thought. I haven't thought of that. I fully agree with you that there are a lot of these camps around the country, and they've probably struggled with lack of revenue. They're in great locations. I'm echoing what you've said. I'm not trying to make it out to be my own. But I'm wondering too, there is a trend towards tiny homes. People love the idea of tiny homes, either to live in or to vacation in. And I wonder if they would make great vacation spots where, you know, we modify some of these camp homes, and you probably put in the wiring, the plumbing to make them a bit more livable than the rugged, rustic camps that they are. But maybe rent them out for 2 weeks at a time to get away from it all. I love that idea. And yes, the land value alone, although remember, I don't like buying land alone because there's no income from it. But the land value would have to be pretty good. They're in the nicer locations. You're absolutely right. Great thinking. And everyone, this is something you can put on your radar to see if you can find something. By the way, I think we should have a rule. This is a tacit rule, an assumption I'm making, but I want to express it. If someone in this group finds a property and presents it to the group, then that person who found it and presented it has first right of refusal to do whatever they want with it. They can buy it on their own. They might make it available to a couple of other people on this group or the entire group. But just because someone presents it doesn't mean that you can go and Google it, find it, and put an offer in that undercuts the person who found it. I think that's normal, right? That's just the standard thing, but I just wanted to voice it so that you don't need to be afraid. I don't want to be afraid about presenting something because I'm fearful that we've got people who are going to go off and try and buy it from underneath me. And in my case anyway, and this is Kris, and my aim is we want to find things that we can present to the group so that we can do this together. I would rather have a slice of 20 watermelons than own an entire grape on my own. Firstly, it's more fun. And secondly, I really believe in this value of getting the collective benefit of the whole group. As a group, we can think better. And to give that some perspective, I once did an event, this is years ago, it was an event called Money and You, but they gave us a simulated situation where we were on a plane, a little light aircraft, and we crash landed up in the tundras, the snow tundras of Canada, hundreds of miles from civilization. And there were like 30 items on this plane. There was an axe, there was a rope, there were 3 raw eggs, there was a box of matches, and on it went, 30 items. And then we all had to figure out would we stay by the crash plane or would we go and walk away to seek for help? That was one question. And the other question was, we could only bring 6 items with us. There was the limit to what we could carry. Which 6 items would you choose? And we were given 20 minutes to figure this out. And so we eventually wrote down our answers. Would we stay with the plane or walk, and which 6 items? And then based on survival rates of actual people who'd crash landed and what they chose to do, they rated our ability to survive this experience. And from the group, there were 260 of us in this event, at this event, doing this exercise. The survival rate was 13%. Only 13% of us would have survived. And then they assigned us to random groups of 8 people. So we were in clusters of 8, and we went through the same exercise. We crash landed. Do we stay by the plane or walk? And which 6 items do we take? I'm telling you, we had the biggest arguments you could imagine, because, you know, there was one person who said, take the box of matches, and we were arguing, there's no wood to burn. It's an ice tunnel. What would you do with matches? Arguments like crazy. And we had the same 20 minutes. And as the 20 minutes came to a close, there was no agreement, because we had these wildly divergent views as to what would be useful and what would be useless. But eventually we said, all right, well, I'll agree to this if you agree. And we came up with our answers and we wrote them down, and they analyzed the results. And the survival rate went from 13% to 68%. The point of this exercise, and you're hearing it secondhand, I experienced it, is even when you're with a bunch of fools and people who don't know what they're talking about because they want to bring this instead of that, the survivability went up. The group brain power, the ability to mentor and brainstorm and mastermind together increased our survivability. And I believe in a similar analogous vein, our ability to do a successful real estate deal goes up when we have all these minds coming together, brainstorming together, rather than one individual thinking they know best how it should be done and they go out and do it on their own. And that was a turning point for me, because prior to that in my life, I tended to do a lot of things myself. And I think by all measures, I was certainly not unsuccessful. I was very successful, but my success and my ability to produce tremendous results went up as I decided that it was smarter to team up with others. So I think that's a great reason for us to join forces and work together on some of these deals we're talking about doing. That was by the by. I know some of you have got commitments. I don't know where everyone's from. I get the sense that everyone here is stateside. Very often when I do events, we have people from all different parts of the world. Some you can see it's dark outside, and with some, the sun's just coming out as it's already set for others. And I want to honor that some of you have, commitments. You said to spouses or babysitters, we're going to be done at this time. But at the same time, I want to make sure that we finish today without a single question being unanswered. Does anyone else have any burning questions, either that you had before you turned up today, or that have come up even from what we've just been talking about, that you wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if you didn't have an answer to that question? Or even not that burning, any question. It's all good. We're here to answer all questions.
And Dolf, thank you so much for your time. We'll take any other questions if we have them. Just want to remind you that the Facebook group will be an amazing resource for you to go in to post your questions and get answers to those questions as well. Our team will be working and monitoring that chat, as well as we'll be reaching out to Dolf and making sure that we get questions answered by Dolf. What an amazing use of time. We do want to honor the time commitment that everybody's made, like Dolf said. Any last burning questions for Dolf and or for Kris Krohn before we take off for the day?
Casey, I got a comment that I just want everyone to be aware of. So because this is a brand new mastermind, that it's possible that we may not see like rip roaring crazy activity in the Facebook group, and there might be a lag between, you know, a comment and a whatever. I want everyone to know that I've got our team, including Angie. You see, she's just lit it up with so many amazing comments throughout this entire session. So if you go check out the comment bar, you'll see that Angie has caught lots of gold nuggets. Angie and the rest of our team is going to be moderating that Facebook page, and we're going to be there regularly. If we see a question that is not getting answered quickly enough, or if we want to draw attention to Dolf specifically sooner rather than later, me and my team will specifically reach out to Dolf to make sure that we do get his perspective. The good thing about commercial is they're not always here today and gone tomorrow. These deals, they move slow. Or I should say slower than you might, you know, than the residential market for sure. But I just want everyone to know that we're keeping a really strong eye there. And I want to challenge all of you to bring 3 deals and talk about them in that Facebook community. And then we're going to be making sure that, you know, beyond when Dolf is in there cruising, that we're keeping our eye on anything else like that. Now, by the way, one other thing, Casey, if I can say it, Dolf and I this last month, are you okay? Listen, Dolf and I shot an amazing A to Z course on commercial and what it is and how to think differently. And we're making that entire course available to everyone here that's part of this group. So some of you had asked questions about books, like, well, you know, what book should I read? What should I do? I do think that the most important thing you can start with is the basics of commercial according to Dolf. And it's about a 4.5 to 5 hour piece of in the video work so our team's going to make sure that you receive an email with that. Casey, how long will it take before everyone's email inbox should have access, username and password to that?
We should be able to get that to you by tomorrow morning.
Okay, so guys, everyone, by tomorrow morning, if you check your inbox, if not, just reach out to support and let us know, or make sure you check your, you know, your spam folder. But you should have that course there. And I think that for the first month, looking at 3 deals and going through that course are certainly going to be 2 things that I would do. And then, of course, remember, if you have a deal that you think is more pressing, you can mention as much on the Facebook page. Our team will moderate that, and we'll make sure that we get fresh eyes on it. So we're not just waiting, you know, for the very next training session. In the meantime, you know, even though Dolph's right, you can't totally control it. I just want everyone to know that I'm going to be putting all of my faith, hope, excitement, passion, and energy in what might happen if we could have a deal already next month. I'm just excited that way. And I find that I stimulate a lot of electrons. If you guys remember Joseph McClendon's conversation yesterday, and those electrons do some speaking. Right. So we're going to bring some good energy and good juju to making some deals happen sooner rather than later. So those are my final remarks. And I'm just so excited for this mastermind, and it's going to be an amazing year. By the time we get around to doing that first commercial deal, I think it's going to be eye-opening, game-changing for everyone here.
I love it. Thank you, Kris. Dolf, any remaining comments?
Yeah, some finals from me. Firstly, Kris, thank you for your enthusiasm. I fully agree with you. I think we're going to precipitate something to happen. I want to thank the entire crew that has made this broadcast possible. You don't always know what goes on behind the scenes. There are a lot of people involved. I want to thank you all. And most of all, I want to thank you, the participants. Without you, we would have nothing to present anyway. And I'm excited for you because some of you are thinking a little bit of, will this really work? How good is it? Am I in the right place? And remember, I don't care what you think of today's broadcast or me. I care whether in 6 months' time, in 12 months, in 18 months' time, you say, wow, that was a really cool decision. And I do know this, if we can collectively or individually help you acquire some commercial real estate, life will never be the same for you. So I applaud you for being here. Well done. Now keep your faith in that you are in the right place, and then look at those 3 properties and bring them to the table, even if you don't know what you're looking for, because in the process of looking at them and figuring out that so far you don't know what you're looking for, you will learn, and we will help you with that next time around. So keep it up. Go out there, have fun, and remember, put your head down on your pillow at night and say, today was a blast, because if you can't do that, you're doing something wrong. And the more fun you have, the easier it is to have fun. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Make sure you have fun. Thank you for being here. I look forward to catching you again next time. And with that, I'll hand back to you, Casey.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Give it up for Dolf and Kris Krohn. All right. Thank you guys for being with us. As a reminder, the second Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. Mountain Time, join us for our masterclass with Dolf and Kris. 3 deals lined up in the chat or in the Facebook group. And as one last reminder, if you have any questions specific, please make sure you reach out to Ryan Holyoke or Angie. and Ryan popped in to say hello. Reach out to one of them and they'll be able to help you with any of your commercial real estate needs. And again, special thanks to Dolf and Kris for being with us today. We will catch you guys next month. Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you guys. Bye.